So, we have been discussing whether it is nature or whether it is nurture, whether we are biologically determined or environment also plays a role in modulating your behavior. In lesson number 7, we had gone over the evolution of man, the Homo sapien, as we know him, and what were the important developments in the evolution and the process of evolution. And we had discussed and analyzed each one of these processes, whether bipedalism, stereoscopic vision, maternal behaviors, attachments, and we had even analyzed the component of family and social systems. Then we moved on to a debate whether it is the biological, completely determined behavior or whether there is the environment which modulates behavior. And you remember the principle of environmental pressures comes basically from the Darwinian evolution, and the principle of interaction of behavior as a resultant of environment working with biology is given. But whether it is more of biological underpinnings or whether it is more of environment, that we have discussed to a point. Let's take the point further. And we know fruit flies are biologically determined. They will move towards the smell of the sight of food and the sight of fruit and the light. They are positively phototactic, moving towards light, attracted to light. And they cannot stop themselves. They're biologically determined. And biologically determined so much is also the dance of the peacock. It dances, opens its feathers, goes through a ritual. It's biologically determined. But there has to be a signal which comes from the environment for the peacock. And also for the fruit fly, the light is there. Once the light strikes, the fruit fly will act upon it according to that signal. In the same manner, the peacock will dance in accordance to the light. Do we dance or do we respond to the lights like the fruit fly or the peacock? And by me, I mean the Homo sapien, the man. Well, there are issues, and we are going to talk about it a little further now. The issues are, yes, we do respond to the external cues. We do respond to the internal cues, and I remember telling you about it. We do respond to a combination of both. And there is some evidence that the internal cues coming from the biological systems, such as the hormone level, determine the behavior, the maternal behavior, the reproductive behavior. Without the appropriate level of hormones, animals would not respond, and similarly for the humans. So therefore, there is a biological basis of that behavior. But there is a fine line which we need to cross here. Animals which are higher on the phylogenetic scale. And by animals higher on the phylogenetic scale, I mean animals which are higher on the evolutionary scale. And by which I mean animals which have a highly evolved cerebral cortex. वो biological systems जो कि evolutionary cycle में evolve हो चुके हैं, नीचे rat, cats, dogs, primates and the Homo sapien, highest. आपको वो मैंने ब्रेन की तस्वीर दिखाई थी लास्ट टाइम, याद रखिए. उसमें जो प्रिंसिपल है उसको हम कहते हैं एनसेफेलाइजेशन. एनसेफेलाइजेशन का मतलब ये है कि cerebral cortex has taken over the functions of the lower order brain is. So अगर cerebral cortex यूं develop होके पड़ी है, और ये आप समझ लीजिए इस हाथ को मैंने cerebral cortex बना दिया और ये नीचे के brain areas हैं, तो humans की cerebral cortex ने पूरी brain को cover किया हुआ, और बाकी एनिमल्स के इस तरह से नहीं. जब ये कवर कर लेती है तो कंट्रोल कर लेती है. जितना ये कंट्रोल करेगी, जितना सेरेब्रल कॉर्टेक्स कंट्रोल होगा, उतनी ज्यादा एनसेफलाइजेशन होगी. जितनी ज्यादा एनसेफलाइजेशन होगी उतनी ज्यादा अडेप्टेबिलिटी होगी. जितनी ज्यादा अडेप्टेबिलिटी होगी उतनी ज्यादा एनवायरनमेंट से इन्फ्लुएंस हम हो सकेंगे. नाउ रिकैपिंग इट, the higher the animal on the evolutionary scale, the greater the encephalization, because the greater the evolution of the cerebral cortex, and therefore the greater the control of the cerebral cortex on the brain, therefore the greater the adaptability of this species to the environment, and therefore more susceptible and influenced by what goes on in the environment. बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग ये आप प्रेमिसेस बनती जा रही हैं कि अगर लोअर एनिमल्स ऑन द एवोल्यूशनरी स्केल है, उनकी बिहेवियर्स बायोलॉजिकली डिटरमिन्ड ज्यादा है. फ्रूट फ्लाइज इसी तरह से आपने पढ़ा भी है और सुना भी है और किताबों में टेक्स्ट में देखा. अभी तक आपने बहुत सारे एक्सपेरिमेंट्स देखे हैं रैट्स के ऊपर. नाउ रैट्स, साइकोलॉजी भरी पड़ी है रैट के एक्सपेरिमेंट्स पे कि वो जो उनको लीवर प्रेस कराना, उनको लाइट ग्रिड क्रॉस कराना, इलेक्ट्रिकल करंट वाला, जो कुछ मर्जी करा ले, रैट्स विल वर्क and will respond to a stimulus. Now this stimulus is the stimulus they will respond to only if it is part of their biological survival systems. A rat will use paws to look for food, which means खाना ढूंढने के लिए रैट को अपने पॉज इस्तेमाल करने की जरूरत है, मुंह इस्तेमाल करने की जरूरत है, सबको जरूरत पड़ती है. Now, a rat will press a lever to get a food pellet because using this paw to do this is part of the natural behavioral repertoire. But people have tried, scientists, साइंटिस्ट बहुत और तरह की सोचते हैं. उन्होंने कहा अच्छा अगर हम इसको मुंह साफ करना सिखाएं, खाना मिलेगा. Doesn't work. Because in the natural repertoire of behavior, a rat does not have to groom face to get food. It uses hands to get food, paws to get food, and uses mouth to get food. So it works that it can press a lever and get a food pellet, or get food, or run to avoid the current on the grid on the floor. It has been doing it even in nature, running to avoid danger. But asking and training a rat to clean its whiskers and face to get food, they have tried, it doesn't work. So the limits are that whatever is given, and especially in the lower animals, the limits are given by the biological system and by what has survived through evolution as a program for their survival. And this is very important because it is a part of the program of the natural survival repertoire. Let me put it again. It is part of the program of the natural survival repertoire of rats. Therefore, behaviors related to this will be learned. इसी तरह Pavlov के dogs के experiment याद हैं आपको, salivation at the sight and the sound of food. But teaching a dog to groom and salivate together doesn't work. Now, so what I'm trying to say here, and you must understand that there are limits in animals, even what we can use the environment to change. The basic principle, the greater the adaptability, the greater the encephalization, the greater the influence of the environment, and the greater the interaction possible. In the Homo sapien, in the man, yes. In the primate, yes. Even less, a little less, but yes. As you go down to the lower animals on the phylogenetic scale, it's even lesser. So what is the principle here? What is the science which tells us? And what is the basic understanding? The cortices, the development of the cortices, and the development of the cortical control. We believe that. But there is another group of scientists. If you remember, I had talked about ethology and ethologists who believed very strongly in Darwinian evolution, and all behaviors that are there in your survival repertoire are Darwinian evolutionary behaviors. They believe strongly in nature determining all behaviors. They believe the behavior is predetermined and programs are set in motion of these behaviors as a consequence of the stimulus or the cue that is given. So the cue is programmed, the behavior is programmed, and the behavior will immediately respond to the cue and run the full program of behavior and end only when the program ends. Extremely deterministic. ये इससे ज़्यादा determined हो नहीं सकता program behavior का. They say that each behavior, once it is initiated, is carried through that particular program, and it has a precipitator or it has a cue to which it responds. अब ये कह रहे थे कि ये सारे प्रोसेसेस ये कहाँ से आया, ये बिहेवियर, ये क्यू, ये प्रोग्राम बिहेवियर का, कहते हैं biologically determined. It is determined by evolution. Remember I said that ethologists very strongly believe in biological evolution of Darwin. उन्होंने कहा जी ये adaptive behaviors हैं, therefore they have been maintained and fine-tuned to a point जब ये behaviors एक दूसरे से relate करते हैं. इसको एक और उन्होंने नाम दिया. उन्होंने कहा जी ये fixed pattern behaviors. Now remember, fixed pattern behaviors, which means that it is fixed, unchanging, and the pattern of behavior is also fixed and unchanging, and the sequence of behaviors is also unchanging. Fixed behavior, fixed pattern, fixed sequence. And this is a continuous process which stays in the animal's repertoire, behavioral repertoire. So I said, once a behavior is initiated, the animal will go through the entire regimen, entire behavior, and it will not stop in between, and it will continue till it naturally ends. जिस तरह नेचर ने प्रोग्राम किया हुआ तब वो एंड होगा, उसके बगैर इन बिटवीन आप उसको बांध दें और उसकी टांगें बांध दें, उसके बाजू बांध दें, उसके पर बांध दें, वो करेगा वही प्रोग्राम जैसे पूरा शुरू हुआ था. और इसकी 3-4 कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स है इस फिक्स्ड प्रोग्राम की या फिक्स्ड पैटर्न की. पहली बात, once a behavior is initiated, it will continue in the same manner till it is ended. दूसरी बात, ये stereotypic है. Stereotypic means repetitive, mean it is repeated. बार बार वही होगा, एक दफा शुरू हुआ उसके बाद खत्म होगा, वही होगा, वही बिहेवियर होगा. इसका बड़ा अच्छा एग्जांपल है मोर का नाचना. वो पर खोलेगा, पूरे खोल के नाचने के बाद फिर वो पर बंद करके फिर वो जो उसने आवाज निकालनी. ये पूरा स्टीरियोटिपिक एक पूरा पैटर्न है जो कि प्रोग्राम्ड है. जिस तरह कंप्यूटर में ना एक आपने ऑन किया स्विच और वो पूरा रन करता है, इसी तरह ये स्टीरियोटिपिक प्रोग्राम रन करेगा. तीसरी चीज, ये इननेट है, ये बायोलॉजिकली डिटरमिन्ड है, इनबॉर्न है, प्रोग्राम्ड है विद इन द जेनेटिक मटीरियल। आप जीन मटीरियल को चेंज कर दें अदरवाइज ये नहीं चेंज होना। चौथी चीज, द सेम फॉर्म इज रिपीटेड every time the same cue is given, so the same cue will elicit the same response. अब ये भी एक बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है कि वही क्यू नजर आते ही इमीडिएटली वो प्रोग्राम जो है वो ऑन हो जाता है और वो रिपीट होता है और वो पूरा साइकिल पूरा करता है। वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग। और उसके बाद जब वो कंप्लीट होता है, वंस इट इज स्टार्टेड इट विल बी, तभी बंद करेगा जब वो कंप्लीट होगा। पीकॉक का डांस ले लीजिए। एंड आखिरी और बहुत जरूरी बात जो याद रखने की है, दैट दिस कैन नॉट बी मॉडिफाइड बाय लर्निंग। पीकॉक को आप अनडांस करना ना सिखाएं, सिखाने की कोशिश करके देखिए। कितने बड़े साइंटिस्ट हैं आप उसके पर बांध देंगे फिर भी वो पर का गुच्छा खड़ा कर देगा सीधा। It will go through that. So, most important, it cannot be modified through learning. इसका मतलब इस fixed pattern behavior में environment का सिर्फ इतना है कि क्यों प्रोवाइड करता है, मॉडिफाई नहीं हो सकता। ये उस स्कूल ऑफ थॉट को बिलोंग करते हैं जो बिलीव करते हैं कि बिहेवियर्स आर फिक्स्ड एंड बिहेवियर्स do occur in a manner which is pre-programmed. वो क्यों ऐसा है? Why do behaviors occur in such a manner? What are the reasons? They have given us some possible variables जो इसमें काम कर रहे हैं। पहले वो कहते हैं इस पूरे जो स्टेज ड्रामा है जिसमें आप हमसे ज्यादा फेमिलियर हैं पीकॉक से, आप उसको देख लीजिए। दूसरा एग्जाम्पल मैं आपको दूं, वो अगर आप दो डॉग्स लड़ रहे हैं, दो कुत्ते एक दूसरे के साथ लड़ते हैं, एक कुत्ता जो है वो पहले गुर्राता है और अपने बाल उसके खड़े होते हैं, दूसरा कुत्ता जरा झुकता है और अपनी कमर और गला ऊपर कर देता है और आप ये खड़ा होकर देखिए पूरा बड़ा एक डांस है बाकायदा। फिर वो एक दूसरे की गर्दन को साइड से झपटता है और जो लूजर होता है वो बिल्कुल झुक के यूं सर नीचे कर देता है और वो दांत भी कम दिखाता है। केनाइन्स किसके विजिबल है? जो अग्रेसर है। ये पूरा एक दिस इज अ competition that they are going in and interacting with. Similarly, the peacock's dance, similarly, other behaviors that I'm going to refer to later. So, इस सब में एनालाइज करें तो 3-4 कंपोनेंट्स हैं. पहला है साइन. साइंस उसको कहते हैं वो स्टिमुलस जो के बिहेवियर को क्यू देता है. द साइन स्टिमुलाई. The sign stimuli acts as a releaser, acts as the cue which releases behavior. So वो एक चाबी है जो दरवाजा खोलती है बिहेवियर की. वो एक क्यू है जो कि पूरा बिहेवियर प्रोग्राम को खोलती है. So what we see here is the sign stimuli. So the releasers are the ones which change behavior. And the releasers are important. A specific sign stimuli can be released by one releaser. Now, there are certain characteristics of the releaser as well. A specific releaser can affect only one species or one gender, one sex of one species. It can affect, let's say, the peacock. For the peacock, the sign stimuli is the female of the species. वो उसकी sign है, वो उसका releaser है. Once it sees that female, it will go through the dance. So, gender या sex, male, female. इसी तरह अगर aggression में देखिए, तो aggression में जैसे 2 dogs का मैंने आपको example दिया. Males, the male dogs. इसी तरह जो आप पाकिस्तानी फिल्में देखें तो वो मेल्स हो, पंजाबी फिल्मों वाले वो डंडे लेके 2 बड़के लगाते हैं, वो भी एक रिलीजर स्टिमुलाई है, दुश्मन नजर आया वगैरह. सो हम बेसिकली वो बायोलॉजिकल डिटरमिनेंट ही हैं. देन यू हैव अनदर एग्जाम्पल ऑफ अ मदर. साइंस स्टिमुलाई उसके लिए क्या है? उसका इन्फेंट, whether it is the bird, whether it is the dog female, or whether it is the cat female, or whether it is the human female, they respond in the same manner to the sign of the cry, distress. The signal comes from the distress cry of the baby, and the mother responds immediately. So there are different ways. I've given you 3 or 4 ways. One is the sight, the visual cue, or the visual releaser, the sign stimuli. The second is the sound, the acoustic cue, or the acoustic stimuli, which is releaser. The third is the smell. We still use our sense of smell, even as primates, higher order primates. So the olfactory or the chemical odors will interact with. And in case of animals, reproductive behavior is very much an olfactory behavior. Reproductive behavior is determined by the pheromonal and the hormonal status of the male or the female. So that particular status is very important, and it can set up a female ready for reproduction with the right amount of hormones, will trigger the kind of response that comes from the males seeking mating and seeking reproduction. So sight, sound, smell, visual, acoustic, and olfactory, these cues can work together to initiate a particular behavior. Then appropriate behavior is released. Why are they called releasers? Because appropriate behavior is released. And appropriate behavior in the case of the peacock is the dance to attract females. Appropriate behavior for the mother is seeking out the distressed infant or the young one. And appropriate behavior for the male seeking a mate is seeking the appropriate level, the female with the appropriate level of hormones that it will mate with. So, sign stimuli lead to a fixed action pattern, and the fixed action pattern will then necessarily invite further signs from the other. Now, this is an interaction, very interesting interaction. Why do you think peacock is dancing? Why do you think it goes through this? It is trying to attract the female peacock to come because it is trying to show I'm attractive. And here I have all this plumage. So the female is attracted. And once a female walks towards this peacock who's dancing, showing that I'm ready, this sign stimuli will again trigger. So there is a exchange of signals. The distress signal of the mother for chicks. अगर आप कभी बाहर देखिए तो कभी मुर्गी फिर रही होती है ना चूजों के साथ, और वो चूजे साथ कुट 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 करते फिर रहे होते हैं, वो बुला रही होती है, कुट कुट करके बुलाती है, आ जाओ मेरे पास खाना खाने. ऊपर से चील गुजरती है, सिर्फ साया नजर आता है उसको, और एकदम से उसकी डिस्ट्रेस होती है, अब छुपो आओ छुपो आओ. No, it goes cook 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 cook, and then all the chicks run and hide under the mother's feathers. And that, so the mother responding to signals, the chicks responding to the signals, and there is a very stereotypic response, and each one of these cues leads to another. इसके लिए एक बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग एक्सपेरिमेंट किया था लहरमान ने एक गत्ते का एक बनाया एक मॉडल. उसकी एक साइड से लगता था कि ये जो हॉक है या ईगल किस्म का था, परों की शेप, और दूसरी तरफ से लगता था कि ये गूज की शक्ल है। तो जब इस तरह से उड़ाता था तो नीचे जो गूज के बच्चे थे या बतख के बच्चे थे उनको लगता था कि ये जो है ये चील आ रही है और भागो, तो उनका रिस्पांस बिल्कुल उसको देखने के बाद और होता। जब इस तरह से उड़ाते थे तो लगता था कि ये गूज उड़ी है, तो सब यूं they would respond as if they would respond to a goose or to a duck. And this he tried different ways and he found out that response is the same. There is a stereotypic response, and this is the sign stimuli, the same board which is cut in different shapes, acts as a sign stimuli for danger if they see it as a hawk, and sign stimuli for mother if they see it as a gosling or a goose. Now, इसके अलावा बड़े इंटरेस्टिंग एक्सपेरिमेंट्स हुए में, एक हेरिंग गल के ऊपर एक्सपेरिमेंट था कि उसको अंडे पे बिठाया हुआ है, अंडे पे वो मदरिंग हार्मोन से गुजर रही है, अंडे पे सेंच रही है। अगर उसको उसी रंग और उसी शेप का लेकिन बड़े साइज का अंडा पास रख दिया जाए, वो अपना अंडा छोड़ के उस बड़े अंडे पे बैठ जाएगी। So the egg, the shape and the size of the egg acts as a sign and releases behavior, and therefore ethologists say that behavior in animals occurs in a predetermined and a prefixed manner, and it is released only when appropriate stimuli are given. सवाल फिर ये पैदा होता है, क्या ये ह्यूमंस में भी फिक्स्ड है? Is behavior fixed in humans as well? I don't think so. What do you say? Think again. Yes, it is fixed in some ways. Experiments were done on infants, human infants. Neonates, पैदा हुए बच्चे 1 हफ्ते 8 दिन, और उनको उन्होंने बहुत ही मामूली सा टच किया, रुई जिसमें बहुत सारा नॉक्शियस बदबूदार कोई ओडर केमिकल का था वो लगाया। बच्चे टर्न देयर फेसेस, these little babies, very new to the world, किसी ने भी सिखाया नहीं उनको, they turn their faces away. But if a finger, a soft finger is placed, they will root towards that finger looking for the mother. और ज्यादा कॉम्प्लेक्स इससे कि smile at a baby and the baby smiles back. Who taught the baby to smile? Fixed pattern. So cue, upturned face, pleasant. This is programmed. You turn your face like this, look angry at the baby, and the baby starts crying. Try this experiment at your younger brother or sister. Ma'am, let's try this. It works. Why? Because it is a pre-programmed, innate system of behaviors that is fixed, and it is only later that it can be modified. Interestingly, experiments have been done where this was a series of experiments done on faces, people living in Papua New Guinea, which is a tribal, primitive tribal system, and Africa, in Asia, in America, in the North American Caucasian context. उन्होंने लोगों की सिर्फ इतना कहा, अगर खुश हैं तो स्माइल की तस्वीर ली, अनहैप्पी हैं तो सैडनेस की तस्वीर ली, और उसके बाद उन्होंने सरप्राइज की तस्वीर ली, उसके बाद हॉरर की तस्वीर ली। ये सारे एक्सप्रेशंस लेके उन्होंने जजेस, कुछ स्टूडेंट्स थे, उनको बिठाया, कहा कि अब हमें बताओ कौन सी तस्वीर से तुम्हें कौन सी इमोशन नजर आ रही है। यस, यू आर राइट, देयर इज with the face, the smile, the curve upwards, this is a happiness. Curve downwards, unhappiness. Surprise, Ukulawa, horror, और बड़ा. Now it is very interesting because that can be differentiated. और हम एक अभी आगे कभी मैं आपको दिखाऊंगी एक फेसेस टेस्ट है जिसमें सिर्फ 4 तस्वीरें हैं। एक गोल सर्कल है, उसमें 2 वीज है, एक नीचे बड़ा वी है, और ये हम देते हैं, पूछते हैं लोगों को, पेशेंट्स को, कि ये आपको कैसी फीलिंग है, हाउ आर यू फीलिंग इनसाइड। वी डोंट इवन हैव टू आस्क देम, तस्वीर दिखाओ कि जी अपने टिक मार्क करो, आपके अंदर की स्टेट क्या है। दिस इज कॉल्ड द फेसेस टेस्ट। व्हाट दैट अस्यूम्स इज दैट देयर इज अ यूनिवर्सैलिटी of emotions, there is a universality of expression, and there is therefore, जब आप यूनिवर्सैलिटी की बात करते हैं, इसका मतलब ये फिक्स्ड हैं across the various forms of human that we have, from Caucasian to Negroid to Mongoloid to whoever you're talking. इसके अलावा तो एक तो ह्यूमंस में फिक्स्ड होने की हमें बहुत सारी एविडेंस ये भी मिलती है, दूसरी फिक्स्ड होने की हमें एविडेंस मिलती है, कभी आपने देखा कि बच्चा, बेबी, इन्फेंट, छोटा रो रहा है, लोगों ने उठाया, किसी ने, कभी आंटी ने, कोई दादी ने, कोई किसी ने पकड़ा, लेकिन बच्चा नहीं चुप होता, लेकिन माँ पकड़ती है तो फौरन बच्चा चुप कर जाता है। किसने उस बच्चे को ये सिखाया है कि ये तुम्हारी माँ? There are signals, the cues, the releasers that come from the hormonal signals that the baby can smell and can differentiate between the smell of the mother and the smell of, so the smell and the odor, the pheromonal odor of the mother gives a signal to the baby that this is my mother. And the mother is responding because she has, तो ये वो कंटिन्यूटी थी ना, जो इंटरैक्शन, एक का साइन स्टिमुलाई दूसरे के लिए रिलीजर हुआ, दूसरे का रिलीजर इसके लिए साइन बन गया, वगैरह वगैरह। तो कंटिन्यूटी बेबी मदर बेबी इंटरैक्शन हो रही है, और मदर विल देन रिस्पॉन्ड टू द डिस्ट्रेस एंड द सिग्नल्स विल कम, और जब बेबी चुप करेगा तो मदर की भी हार्मोनल लेवल जो है वो डिफरेंट हो जाएगी। लेकिन इसके बाद भी फिर भी मैं कहूंगी, एंड यू मस्ट रिमेंबर दैट मैन, द होमो सेपियन, learns from experience. We, the highly encephalized homo sapiens, can learn from experience and can change our environment. जिस स्टूडियो में मैं हूं, एयर कंडीशनिंग है, I have, you have, we have the capability of changing the environment that we are in. We are no longer bound in the way that the lower animals are by the environment that, so we change environment in accordance to the needs and our requirements, and therefore even though we are interacting with the environment, we are changing the environment. So as human beings, we do have the capability, even though some behaviors are fixed, we do have the capability of altering behaviors in accordance to environment and altering environment in accordance to our needs. So suffice it to say that there is a nature versus nurture debate. There are schools of thought which believe very strongly that behavior is biologically determined. But as I said before, that Homo sapien, with the brain and the capability that we have, we as a species are adaptable, and we as a species are stimulated by the environment. We as a species are also stimulated by the internal environment, and we as a species then make a judgment, and we learn what to make the best judgment, and that is why we are surviving. So far we have done the evolutionary basis of behavior, how we have evolved and how we have developed the type of behaviors that we have, and what do we have in common with the lower animals, and what do we have which is not in common with them. Now let me move on into the next component of biological basis of behavior, and that is the genetic basis of behavior. Now here we're going to go into the proper genes and the gene material and how these gene materials alter, affect, change how we are and what we are and what our behaviors are. And can they really do it? In order to understand that, we have to understand what is the genetics and what is, then we will move on into behavior genetics. And then we will also see how behavior genetics is affected by the development of the brain, which is genetically affected by abnormalities or anomalies that we will, in this same sequence, we will progress. Genetic material, we all know, not very difficult. आपने सबने स्कूल में भी पढ़ा है कि आप, you are, there are XY is the normal male and double X is the normal female chromosomes. ये sex chromosomes हैं. Simplest बात. Normal male एक X chromosome, एक Y chromosome. One from the mother, one from the father. ये दोनों chromosome जब pair बनता है, this, the X and the Y, form basis of the male. What happens? There is an X and there is a Y and there is another Y. दो Y's जुड़ जाते हैं. Now this is a male has an X but has two Y's attached to this X on the sex chromosome. This male is a highly aggressive male. Evidence has shown. And in fact, there were studies done on the jail population in a particular country where they found that those males who had committed brutal and very aggressive crimes were the males who had majority of them, significant majority of them, had the two Y's. So one X and two Y's. On the other hand, the female, one X from the mother, one X from the father, there are two X chromosomes which form the female chromosome. What happens if there is one X from the father, one X from the mother, one X from the father, but additionally there is by accident a Y which also attaches. Remember, एक X और एक Y हो तो मेल होता है, लेकिन यहाँ पर तो एक और X भी है. अब क्या बनेगा? This is a female with very strong male characteristics. And again, because of this genetic accident that she has inherited a Y from the father in addition to the X. इसी तरह से there are females which have double X के साथ 0 या XO. एक फीमेल है, फीमेल X हार्मोन क्रोमोसोम, लेकिन दूसरी तरफ दूसरा क्रोमोसोम नहीं आया, 0 क्रोमोसोम है. So there is only the female chromosome. They are females, but these females have defects which are abnormal. And these are again a genetic abnormality. Therefore, genes determine the biological systems which are expressed in what we are and who we are, whether from the simplest decision on the gender, simplest decision on the sex, male or female. And in humans, there are 23 pairs of chromosomes, out of which only one is a sex chromosome. Drosophila, on the other hand, has 8 pairs of chromosomes. और उसकी simpler है chromosome, and therefore Drosophila पे बहुत ज़्यादा studies हुई हैं, behavior genetics की और genes and behavior की, and we will talk about that later. But you see how interesting that the simplest possible form and the shape that eventually the human being will take is determined by that one double X or one XY or an additional accident XO or XYO, which is the Down syndrome, where there is one X, one Y, and there is a zero, which is a negligible, this thing, attached to another chromosome, which does not carry the sex. And this then creates abnormalities of the brain as well as the body. जेनेटिक बेसिस ऑफ बिहेवियर की कॉन्सेप्ट्स हम याद करें, बायोलॉजी में आपने पढ़े हैं. क्रोमोसोम्स हमें मालूम है, सेक्स क्रोमोसोम्स भी हैं, 22 अदर क्रोमोसोम्स भी हैं जिन पे जेनेटिक मटेरियल कैरी किया जाता है और इनहेरिट होते हैं फ्रॉम बोथ पेरेंट्स और पेयर्स में होते हैं. विल टॉक अबाउट दैट अ लिटिल लेटर. फिर प्रोटीन्स हैं जो इनहेरिट होती हैं और प्रोटीन्स की चेन्स जो जेनेटिक मटेरियल को मेकअप करती हैं. फिर जीनोटाइप्स व्हिच इज द टाइप जेनेटिक मेकअप, द फिनोटाइप द एक्सप्रेस्ड फिजियोलॉजिकल एक्सप्रेशन जहां पर होती है फिनोटाइप. म्यूटेशंस जहां जेनेटिक मटेरियल में खुद कहीं अंदर गड़बड़ हो जाती है बाय एक्सीडेंट, बाय सम मैकेनिज्म. देन द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ डीएनए, डाईऑक्सी राइबोन्यूक्लिक एसिड, and RNA, the ribonucleic acid, extremely important. ये कोड है हमारे बीइंग के, ये कोड है हमारे होने के, हमारे बनने के. और ये कोड जो है ये आपके जो सेल है, बॉडी का हर सेल कहीं भी है, मसल में है, ब्रेन में है, स्टमक में, कहीं भी कोई सेल भी है, उसके सेल के न्यूक्लियस के अंदर, सेल के सेंटर में, उसकी सेंट्रल बॉडी में, उसकी सेंट्रल मशीनरी के ऑपरेशन में ये डीएनए is sitting there. And the DNA then determines what you are going to be and who you are going to be and the kinds of proteins that are going to be mentioned. Let's talk about chromosomes. Defined chromosomes are only very thin, very minuscule strands of chemical proteins. Strands mean like thread-like, very thin thread-like structures. Chemical protein से बने हुए in the nucleus of each cell, हर body के cell के अंदर ये मौजूद है. And this is, each chromosome is composed of a large number of genes. And these large number of genes eventually determine the complex behavior that we exhibit. क्रोमोसोम की एक बड़ी कैरेक्टरिस्टिक जो मैं अभी पहले बता चुकी हूं कि दे आर इन पेयर्स, दे अकर इन पेयर्स एंड दे ट्रैवल इन पेयर्स. एंड इन पेयर्स में से एक comes from the father, one comes from the mother. And each one of these has a specific number. There are 23 pairs of chromosome and one pair for the sex and 22 for other traits. And as I said before, the Drosophila, the simpler animal, has very few 8 pairs. Now, the genes on the chromosome determine the kinds of chains of proteins that are found in your body. These proteins are involved in the growth and the development and the functioning of the organism. So, जिस वक्त सेल फर्टिलाइज होता है और जब तक डेथ डिजेनरेशन नहीं हो जाती, these cells are managing your body. And whatever is happening is pre-programmed by these genetic materials. So we are a product of our genes, no matter what we say. Anyway, genes determine the chains of proteins that are involved in the growth and the development of the organism and the functioning of the organism. So if you take yourself as a biological organism, we are also being run by these genes. There are two kinds of proteins that are essentially found in the system, in the genetic material. One, which is the structural protein. The structural protein is the protein that determines the structure, understandably, of the organism and the form, shape, etc. etc. क्या साइज होगा, बाल कैसे होंगे, दांत कैसे होंगे, बोन्स कैसी होगी, साइज कितना होगा, ये सब जो स्ट्रक्चर्स की बातें हैं ये डिटरमिन करते हैं ये स्ट्रक्चरल प्रोटीन्स. दूसरी तरफ जो प्रोटीन्स हैं वो हैं एंजाइम्स विच मॉड्यूलेट द मेटाबॉलिज्म, यानी कि आपकी मेटाबॉलिज्म किस तरह की है, क्या क्या बर्न करने के लिए क्या क्या मटेरियल चाहिए, क्या क्या बनाने के लिए क्या क्या चाहिए. Simply, very simply put, let me say there are physical, physiological, chemical, biochemical processes, and each one of these processes needs proteins, amino acids, enzymes, and other chemical products which are provided by and signaled to be provided by the enzymes which are called the proteins which are genetically determined. So structural proteins हैं और enzymes हैं which are modulating your metabolism in all parts of the body at all points. Now we come further into this and let's see what we have. The genotype. The genotype, simply defined, very simply defined, is the set of genes which underlie the genetic makeup. This is the genotype. I am carrying with me that genetic material. That is my genotype. It can be assessed by doing genetic analysis. The genotypic material can be found and a picture can be developed. But then there is the phenotypic as well. The phenotypic is the observable, the outward expression, the measurable traits that have a genetic basis, but it is expressed in observable, measurable form. Whatever capacity, whatever behavior, whatever quality you're looking for, the phenotypic is the one which has been expressed. Now, interestingly, the phenotypic can be expressed only after interaction with the environment. The genotypic is not altered unless mutations take place or unless genetic engineering takes place. We cannot change this material. However, the phenotypic depends on the environment for the modulation and for the change that can take place. So, what we have here is that there is an interaction of genetic material with the environment for this expression. And let me give you an example, a very simplified example. You may have the genetic makeup for a tall height, a strong body. A baby is born, has these possibilities, but it is not given enough nutrition, food at the time, milk, food and other nutrients which are important for building the bones and the structure and the height and the body of the baby into the tallness that it has inherited. So it will remain short. In the same manner, another simple example, ये 4th class की science की किताबों में भी अक्सर नजर आता है. You take a seed of orange and a seed of orange, plant them in two very identical, similar pots with similar and identical जो उसकी soil. एक को आप रखें धूप में, उसको पानी भी दें, उसको फर्टिलाइजर भी दें और उसको सारी अप्रोप्रिएट उसकी नर्चरिंग करें. दूसरे को ना धूप दें, ना पानी वक्त पे दें, ना उसको केयर करें, ना गोडी शोडी करें. दोनों में से आपका क्या ख्याल है, कौन सा पौधा ज्यादा अच्छा हो? है वही एक ही सीड था, एक ही माल्टे का था, या एक ही सेब का था, लेकिन जिसकी नर्चरेंस एनवायरनमेंट में हुई उसका जाहिर है कि पौधा बढ़ेगा और उसकी जो क्वालिटी होगी वो बेहतर होगी एज कंपेयर टू द वन. सो फेनोटाइपिक का मतलब ये है कि द एनवायरनमेंट हैज एन इंटरप्ले ऑन द एक्सप्रेशन ऑफ द गिवन जेनेटिक मेकअप. लास्ट चीज जो कहने वाली है कि जो हायर ऑर्डर एनिमल्स हैं उनका बिहेवियर फिनोटिपिक है. इट इज अफेक्टेड whatever genetic programming there is, it is affected by the learning in the environment, by the influences of the environment, and therefore becomes the behavior geneticist has a lot to study before he can say that this is the behavior which is genetically determined. We have to rule out the environmental possibilities. ये इतना आसान नहीं है, इसीलिए बिहेवियर जेनेटिसिस्ट की स्टडी जो थी वो ड्रोसोफिलिया से शुरू हुई और वहीं पे किया कि बहुत कंट्रोल्ड एनवायरनमेंट में ये स्टडीज करके बता सके कि ये हाँ वी कैन आइडेंटिफाई देयर बिहेवियर्स व्हिच आर जेनेटिकली डिटरमिन्ड.